Good afternoon. My name is Cordell McGarry, and I'm here to share with you information regarding the City of Chicago's Professional Declaration of Eligibility process, which is used for our minority-owned business enterprise and our women-owned business enterprise certification programs. The Professional Declaration of Eligibility process is an innovative way of allowing qualified attorneys and CPAs to review, verify, and attest that an applicant meets the requirements to become certified with the City of Chicago for our minority-owned business enterprise and our women-owned business enterprise, or MBE, WBE certification programs. The program guidelines for MBE or WBE eligibility are the foundation of our programs, are contained with the regulations governing certification of minority and women-owned business enterprises, veteran-owned business enterprises, and business enterprises owned or operated by people with disabilities for non-construction contracts. The regulations can be found on our website at the URL that's listed below. Eligibility for this process as a certification as an MBE or WBE would include firms that are involved in non-construction activities, that is to say that they're not involved in construction trades or, let's say, licensed plumber, general contractor, or the like. Non-suppliers or distributors are not allowed to participate in the program. Also, eligibility includes firms that have not been denied for certification within the past 3 years or have withdrawn an application for certification within the last 3 years, or firms that have graduated from the program within the last 3 years, graduation being that their business size exceeded the size standards for qualification as an MBE or WBE. The licensed professional that would be involved in this process would be an attorney or a CPA, licensed in Illinois for at least 3 years, has not been convicted or found liable of fraud and or making false statements, and they would not have an ownership interest or familial relationship with the firm that they are seeking to get certified. What should be done by the professional in this process would be to do a full review of the application and all the documentation that was submitted by the applicant vendor for certification. The professional would be expected to conduct an on-site business interview with the owner of the business, as well as prepare a summary report that will provide a recommendation for certification. Finally, we will ask the licensed professional to attest to the certification process, and that's a form that we'll talk about later on in our discussion today. Once the file has been reviewed by the attorney and submitted, or by the professional, that is to say, and submitted to the city and received, the City of Chicago, through its Department of Procurement Services, will expeditiously review the application, and upon completion will either grant certification or, in the case of a denial, send a preliminary notice of denial of certification. In the event that additional information is needed to complete the review, say clarification of information that was submitted, we will contact the applicant to seek that information. Incomplete applications that are submitted under this process would be subject to review under our normal standard certification process. So technically, what happens next? Once you're certified as a MBE or WBE, that certification is good for 5 years. Firms that will seek recertification after the 5-year process would do so under our normal standard certification process. Once a decision has been issued under the Professional Declaration of Eligibility, the file will be subject at a later date to a full scope audit to ensure compliance with the program regulations. Certified firms during the 5-year certification period must submit annual no-change affidavits and all other program regulations, and meet all of the program regulations with respect to continuing eligibility. The annual no-change affidavit is a document essentially that attests to the city that there's been no changes or circumstances with that firm's certification that would cause it to no longer be eligible for consideration as a MBE or WBE. Do's and don'ts of the city. Well, the city does not certify or endorse any particular CPA or attorney in the preparation or review of applications for vendors seeking certification with the City of Chicago. Documentation that will be part of the certification process would consist of the completed application, and we're electronic now, so everything is paperless. A copy of all required documents that would be submitted with that application. And as you go through the application, it will prompt you as to what documents will be needed. The Professional Declaration of Eligibility Affidavit or attestation form that I referred to earlier would be this document that would also need to be included. And basically, the affidavit is attesting to the fact that the professional is, in fact, meets the standards for participation in the program, as well as having done a review, completed a site visit, and all the necessary steps relative to making a recommendation for certification. The electronic application and document list are available on the online platform, our DPS and Certification and Compliance System. We refer to it as C2. And the website where you can begin this process will be www.chicago.mwdbe.com. Documentation that will be needed to be submitted with the application for certification would include contact information relative to the company itself that's seeking certification, the type of certification that is seeking, either MBE and or WBE. The type of certification should also include a description of the products and services that would be provided by the firm that's seeking certification. Ownership information, information regarding the employees, the operating facility, and financial documents, which would include personal and corporate tax returns, would be required as part of the process. Licenses that are needed in order to operate in the city or professionally would also be required to be submitted. Other documentation would include resumes, professional associations or participation in professional associations, listings of equipment and leases, which would help document the experience factor in the application. Contract information also would be required if available, which would consist of pending contracts, contracts that may have been completed within the past 2 years, and any current invoices that are submitted in the course of doing business. Additional documentation in this process would be what we refer to as Attachment 1, the individual statement of ownership. This document would be required to be completed by all owners of a particular applicant firm. Attachment 4 is the Affidavit of Social Disadvantage. It actually serves to provide the basis for consideration as a minority or woman-owned business. Attachment 5 is the IRS Form 4506T, which is a request for a transcript of tax returns. In addition to the tax returns that which you provide, we ask that you provide this form, which would be needed, if necessary, just to verify information on the tax return that's been submitted. We ask that you provide a form for the business tax returns, as well as a separate form for the personal tax returns. Again, after certification under the Professional Declaration of Eligibility process, all applications at some point will be subject to a full audit with regard to, again, determining compliance with the regulations. This would consist of a full review of the certification and the firm, and we do endeavor to look at all of our files that will come through this process. In the event that a firm does not comply with the regulations or we find that the certification was erroneous, the firm can be subject to decertification. There are several types of penalties which would, again, be a part of that process. They consist of technical and substantive errors. Technical errors, those that aren't intentional, would basically consist of errors that didn't affect the certification outcome. And again, these are errors